So I saw this post on Threads, and I know what you're going to say. You're going to say Threads. Isn't that like the worst of the Twitter variants? And yeah, pretty much. But whatever. I was there. Maybe I'm the worst. Let's moving on. Okay. It is very possible that I am generally a naive individual. I will hear people say things and I will just assume that they're telling the truth. When very often it seems like the correct response should be, wow, this person might be full of shit. For example, there was this girl that I knew in high school and she had a weight problem, and when we were in a health class together. This is all relevant information. Normally, if I were just telling a story, I wouldn't point that out, but it's relevant for this story, okay? And we went home and we were supposed to record what food we ate. And she came back, and the amount of food that she ate was so ridiculously low that it should have instantly raised a bullshit alert meter in my brain. She didn't eat a kiwi for breakfast. She ate half a kiwi for well, you just can't abide those 70 calories. You got to cut it down to 35. And she said that the reason that she had a weight problem was that she had a thyroid problem, and she was a strict vegan. She hadn't touched meat in like 6 years or something. And I heard all of that, every single word of that, and my response should have been, holy shit, this person is full of it. And you know what? I didn't. I knew that it was weird. I knew that something was off, but it didn't actually cross my mind until much later that she's just a liar. And this person would lie about everything, chronic liar all the time. And that was probably one of the first things that I had to learn, was that if something seems off repeatedly, you don't need to know the whole story to know that something is wrong. A different person, a completely different person, kept falling down. She kept having these accidents. And eventually, after a ridiculous amount of time, it's like, wait a minute, maybe something's going on. And then it came out that she was, abusing substances to the point that she was just completely trashing her body. And these falls were the result of severe impairment from various substances that she had been using over the years. And that didn't register to me. It didn't register to me until like her fourth or fifth consecutive accident. Like, wait a minute, maybe something else is going on here. And look, I'm not saying that you need to go around looking at people saying, aha, I bet something's going on with you. But at the back of your mind, it always has to be there. Maybe this person is lying. Maybe they're full of shit. Maybe they're not trustworthy, etc. And there's a variety of tricks that liars can use to artificially bolster your trust. And the problem is that liars actually have the advantage if they're trying to hijack your brain. If somebody is a con man, they can start off trying to make other people look untrustable in order to artificially bolster your support of them. And that's why you have to have these strict rules in place, because our primate brains are designed to perceive camaraderie as trustworthiness. It needed to be. In sub-Saharan Africa, when we were a tribe of 20 people, we couldn't think, oh, maybe the tigers are actually, the good guys and we're the bad guys in this scenario. It's like, no, if you came together to fight for something, then you needed to believe that everybody was on the same side. But when you have, various malignant individuals entering into the discussion, then those tendencies can be hijacked. You need to be on the lookout for that. That's why if people break certain social conventions, you need to be suspicious. You can't perceive them as just quirky and, oh, that's just this one little thing, and then move on from there. You always need to take a step back and have a 40,000 foot view of the situation. And that was the problem that I had in my marriage, was that I never took a step back. Yeah, it was just constantly moving the goalpost. It's like she would establish this absolutely outrageous belief, And then as soon as it was normalized, then she would have another outrageous belief, and then another one, and then another one, and another one, and another one, and another one, and another one. And all of these rules, and they all built on top of each other to the point where if I tried to explain the situation, there would be like 15 layers of things that I had to explain before it even fucking made sense. And I told myself that if I ever got in a relationship again, I would periodically reassess things from a blank slate, from a clean slate. Not, does this make sense given the 45 layers of bullshit that this person has constructed over time, but does this objectively make sense? And I think that part of trying to be understanding of other people and their positions was always trying to look at it through their lens, which I think is a good thing to do unless you have a malicious person trying to modify your lens to some, shitty end. There's an adjective, there's a correct word that I can't think of it right now. Apparently my brain doesn't work. But yes, all of these, charitable accommodations and that kind of thing are designed for if somebody is acting in good faith. And you have to understand that, anywhere from 10 to 25% of the population might not be acting in good faith, depending on how you decide to describe it. So, yeah, always keep that in mind. People might be full of shit. And especially if you're in a relationship, especially if you love somebody, that's usually when your guard is the lowest. But when bullshit comes up, you need to be assertive and not accommodating. And I think that was probably my biggest flaw, was the person that I was with needed somebody to tell her, this is fucking ridiculous. You are being fucking ridiculous, and you either need to knock it off or get out. And I did exactly the opposite. I'm like, oh, that's fucking ridiculous. Well, how incredibly quirky. I guess that's just the new normal. Okay, whatever. And apparently I hadn't learned my lesson from high school because she was full of shit. She was absolutely full of shit. She was literally inventing imaginary mental illnesses and that did not exist. Okay, and I consider myself a reasonably rational, intelligent person. But when I was proceeding under the assumption, oh, okay, so this weird alternate thing persona exists. Okay, and the worst part, the absolute worst part, and it's almost embarrassing to talk about this, was that it had actually been established that she created imaginary mental illnesses. How that didn't register when she did it again, I have no excuse. There is no excuse, and I don't know, maybe I deserved the emotional abuse that I received. I mean, not like deserved, but like I earned it. Because if you deliberately, repeatedly just allow shit to happen and you just tolerate it over and over and over and over again, that's fine until you find somebody who's deliberately trying to find the line and then cross it repeatedly. And I think that my approach to people and relationships would have worked just fine if I wasn't with somebody who was being deliberately, repeatedly manipulative and emotionally abusive. Because, I always was raised to believe that you should try to help people if they're having a hard time. Nothing prepared me for somebody who would pretend to be having a bad time just because there was something broken in their brain. And it was incredibly apparent that she was making herself miserable in the process. I just didn't realize that anybody was so self-destructive that they would deliberately make their self miserable for no apparent reason, or at least no good reason. Look, I'm not saying that there isn't some reason, I'm just saying that there is no good reason. So a lot of my time and effort has been spent identifying what are the red flags in a relationship. And I think that we all know what the main red flags are, and I have a list here. I am using a script, but I'm not just reading it. So, but now I'm about to read it. So, first red flag: they do nothing, want nothing, or say that they want things and never follow through. Now, look, I'm not saying that somebody can't have unrealized dreams or things that they haven't gotten around to, but you want somebody who does something sometimes. And you can't say, oh, I found somebody who does something because they say that they're going to do things. No, you have to assess them based on what they're actually doing. Now, sure, I mean, I would like to be able to play the violin, but I'm not going out telling people, oh yeah, I'm just about to start studying the violin. Because that would be bullshit. That's a crock of shit. But I encounter people, it's like, oh, I'm working on this, I'm working on this, I'm working on this. And it's like, okay, well, what's the progress that you've made? And then you find out that there is no progress. They have not made any progress. They're not actually doing anything. They're just saying that they're going to do things. So somebody who does things is somebody who has done things. So instead of finding out what somebody's working on, figure out what they've finished. And if they haven't finished anything, then maybe when they say that they're going to do things, maybe they're just deluding themselves. Maybe they're full of shit. Maybe they know that they're lazy and they're trying to overcompensate, or maybe they just have no follow through and they don't realize it. It doesn't matter. If they don't do anything, then they don't do anything. They're probably not a very interesting person. Now, look, I'm not saying that that makes them a bad person, but I am saying that you have to, weigh that in. So red flag is do nothing, want nothing, etc. Okay. Red flag number 2. You know what? I should number these because I'm gonna lose my place, and then I'm gonna feel stupid. Okay, so red flag number 2: they cannot manage their emotions. If somebody just freaks out and just starts yelling or just starts screaming or crying or something, that is a definite red flag. Now, look, I'm not saying somebody can't have a bad day, but you need to watch for these things and you need to make a mental note. And part of my problem was when I would see these things, I would take the most extreme charitable interpretation. It's like, oh yeah, such and such happened. Oh yeah, this, ancient event triggered this other thing. And look, I'm not saying triggers aren't real, but it is a liability if you can't manage your emotions. And if it doesn't matter if there's a reason for it, it's still a liability. Now, I'm not saying that any one of these red flags in isolation or a single isolated incident, with the exception of revenge. I mean, if somebody is like slashing tires, then fuck that person for a million billion years. There's no coming back from that. But generally speaking, anything that's a red flag, if you can contextualize it and it's isolated and it's not an ongoing pattern, maybe it really is an exception. But it is a red flag if somebody can't manage their emotions. Okay, red flag number 3. They see everything in black and white. Good or evil. Us versus them. Our side, their side. Jesus or the devil. Just nothing in between. Just black and white thinking. Well, I'm sorry, but the world is nuanced. The world is complicated. There's probably a lot more than 50 Shades of Grey, actually. And things are multidimensional. You can't look at things through this ridiculously simplified lens. And not just in relationships. I would do this with like spokespeople. It's like, oh, is this feminist or is this not feminist? It's like, okay, well, maybe in one specific context, that question makes sense. But when you're talking about really complicated things, then you use different lenses for different ends. You can't reduce everything down to a yes or no and then try to pigeonhole that into good or bad. That's just not a helpful way to look at things. Okay, red flag number 4. Okay, so red flag number 3 was everything that's black and white thinking, splitting, etc. Extremes of behavior or threats. This would include things like suicidal ideation and self harm as well. It just anything that is completely out of whack. And it could be out of whack in one direction and it could be out of whack in the other direction. But if somebody is absolutely out of control on any one variable in their life, then that's a red flag. And maybe there's a way to contextualize it, and maybe there's not a way to contextualize it. Either way, it's a red flag. I'm not going to give this disclaimer every single time, or else this video is going to be like 3 hours long. Okay, number 5 is everything is somebody else's fault. You know the kind of person. They have enemies, they have grudges, they have delusions of persecution, everybody's out to get them, that kind of thinking. But there's different kinds of fault finding as well. If just a general preoccupation with blame, because a normal healthy mindset is to perceive most individuals as complex and multifaceted with a variety of different motivations and thoughts and desires, and it all gets complicated, gets jumbled, and then, life happens. But some people want things to be other people's fault. It's like, this is all your fault, or, especially that alone. Can't you see that this is all your fault? If somebody says something like that, it should instantly be a red flag, regardless of the context. Because even if something is entirely one person's fault, then it's still not helpful to say it like that, You have to reason through it and figure out people's motivations. And maybe at the end of the day, if something bad happened, then there really was one single core thing that drove it to happen. And I'm not saying that you can't identify that, but you shouldn't fixate on that, because then that's the same thing. That's the preoccupation with blame. Instead of saying, whose fault is it, you can say, how do we prevent this from happening again? And if the answer to that is shame and condemnation and ridicule and blacklisting, then I'm sorry, that's fucked. All right. Number 6, fanaticism about anything. This can be politics. This can be religion. You could probably choose something comical. If somebody does something that is generally considered positive, but they do it for 21 hours a day or something at the expense of everything else in their life and the world, that can be a problem too. Even if the core fundamental thing that they're doing is generally considered positive. Everything in moderation. If somebody does recreational reading or math, fine. If they do it for 20 hours a day and it's interfering with, their life and their hygiene, they can't work, then all of a sudden it's a problem again. So, and look, for the context of a relationship, you're generally looking for somebody who is balanced about things, who is an interesting, well-rounded person. Now, maybe people that are hyper dedicated to one specific thing, maybe there is a place for that in the world. I'm not saying that they're bad people, but if you're trying to date, I don't know, a future Olympic athlete, and they can't make more than 20 minutes for you a week because their entire life is dedicated to training for the Olympics, more power to them in their aspirations to be an Olympian, but I don't think that makes them a good relationship partner. Because what kind of a relationship is it if you can't spend any time together? And I'm not saying that the fanaticism is just about time constraints. It's about something being out of whack. It's about something not being balanced. And I think when I was younger, I used to actually value something that was absolutely over the top extreme. It's like, oh, if character X is bad or character trait X is bad, then I guess the opposite of whatever character trait X is good. So if you have more of it, then that's a good thing. And that is absolutely the wrong way to look at it, especially when I was using my rose-colored glasses to tint things which probably any rational, reasonable, sane person would have perceived as negative and turn them into something positive. And it's really easy to do that, especially if you have motivated reasoning. It's like, oh, I love this person, that means they must be good, and they did this thing, that means that it must be good. And it's just this recursive, unhelpful relationship. You have to be able to perceive faults in other people. Wanting somebody who's perfect is fucking ridiculous. Wanting somebody who thinks that they're perfect is fucking ridiculous. And telling yourself that you have to feel guilty if you don't think that somebody that you love is already perfect is extremely ridiculous. And you know what? Maybe the red flag is in yourself, not in the other person at that point. Yeah, the very concept that something should be ideal or should be perfect or shouldn't have flaws is flaws. Okay, let's try that again. Faults is inherently toxic, and if that's in yourself, then you need to work on yourself. Simple as that. Let's see. Now, some of these things are starting to repeat, but I think that it's good to word things in different ways. My red flag number 7 was crippling insecurity. Now, I don't mean sometimes somebody has an insecure thought. Everybody has that. I mean, insecurity is one of their primary motivators in life. And hiding behind insecurity can be toxic shame. And toxic shame, I don't want to get into my psychological theories because it is very possible that I'm wrong or talking out of my ass. So if I were to talk about shame, I would probably do it in a different video, and I would have to have a long disclaimer. So let's not go into my bizarre theories of shame. Let's just say that crippling insecurity is definitely a red flag. If you see that somebody is constantly being motivated or constantly being inhibited by these insecurities, then yes, you should assume that they're insecurities, even if they're not explicitly listed. If somebody is unusually timid or reserved, or they have some weird thing like they always have to cover up themselves, you should assume that there's some form of motivation behind it. And moreover, you shouldn't necessarily assume that they're being honest about what that motivation is. Now, it's not your responsibility to diagnose somebody. I mean, if you're going to get in a relationship with somebody, then ideally, yes, you would eventually want to understand that other person. And that always blows some people's mind. The least introspective people in the world, I'm not going to list any specific psychological conditions. There are definitely 2 or 3 that I associate it with. The least introspective people are the people who are the most uncomfortable if you are trying to understand them. And you know what? Maybe I should have listed that as a red flag. If somebody doesn't want to be understood, that is a big deal. That is, and that is something that I have written off as not a big deal on multiple different occasions. If 2 people are in a friendship or in a romantic relationship, then they should want to be understood. They should want their motivations and desires to be shared and be transparent. Now, look, I'm not saying that everybody has to be as much of an open book as I am. Maybe that too is a little bit out of, a little bit unbalanced. Maybe some reservations and some guardedness is good, but too much guardedness is also a big problem. And if somebody doesn't want to think, or if somebody doesn't want to introspect, or if somebody doesn't want to understand their own thought processes or motivations, there may be a reason. And one thing that I found out is that some people who appear to be extremely irrational and don't know what their core motivations are might actually have 1 or 2 specific gigantic triggers, and it's usually associated with shame, but I digress, where they actually do know what the underlying thing is. They know why they don't want to talk about X, but they don't want to talk about why they don't want to talk about X in sort of like an infinitely recursive relationship. And so that appears to be a brick wall, and it would probably be wrong to assume that that person has no introspection at all. but that doesn't mean that it's healthy. Okay, so it's not your job when you're assessing somebody else for being a potential romantic partner to necessarily understand everything that there is to understand. But if you find a gap in the understanding and you can't get through, then something is going on, all right? And you don't need to know what that something is. You just need to know that you should be alerted to it. You should be a little bit nervous, because you should always be a little bit nervous, because 10% of the population are motherfuckers, just emotionally abusive, toxic fucks that you do not want in your life, you do not want to trust with your secrets. And yes, that leaves 90% of people are great. That's great. Hang out with those people instead. And if you identify that you are attracted to toxic people, then you need to introspect into yourself. You need to figure out why that is. Is it the excitement? Is it the thrill? Do you find, mentally healthy people boring? Do these toxic people perceive you as easy prey? Whatever it is, you gotta figure that shit out, and you've got to draw a line in the sand. You do not want to let toxic people into your life. You do not want to trust liars with your secrets. You do not want manipulators to have access to you or your thoughts or your environment or your space. Keep toxic people the fuck away from you on every conceivable level. And that leaves, 7.2 billion people in the world. Yeah. All right. So red flag number 8, although I probably screwed up my ordering because I just listed some things that weren't numbered, but whatever. In my list, red flag number 8 is the need to control things. Big things, small things, doesn't matter. If somebody is obsessed with the notion that they have to control others' speech or behaviors or actions or where they can live, doesn't matter. If they have a preoccupation with control, that is a red flag and you should be on the guard for it. And if they're not controlling you now, they're probably going to either control you later or they're controlling you in a way that you don't realize that they're controlling you. Yes. Okay, number 9. They are obsessed with title, status, image, or public perception. Now, look, this is another one of those things where balance is important. Obviously, somebody who isn't the slightest bit concerned with what any human on the entire planet thinks of them, well, first off, most people who say that are actually compensating for something, so they actually probably do care quite a bit. That's the toxic selflessness that I've talked about before, but I don't want to talk about that right now. If you put toxic before anything, then yeah, that's probably a red flag. So if you encounter toxic selflessness, then yeah, fuck that. Maybe I should have put that in the list, but whatever. If somebody is obsessed, then yeah, that obsession is going to taint everything, and stay away. All right. Now, this might be a little controversial. I'm not trying to upset anybody, but my number 10 red flag is weird sensitivities, tone policing, and looking for offense. And look, it doesn't have to be with you. It could be with randos on the internet. And you know what? Maybe I am every bit as guilty of this. I spent about 12 years of my life as a toxic fuck, and maybe it's a good thing I'm single. But red flag is tone policing and looking for offense. And I mean, probably one of the first things that would come to mind would be religiosity or politics. It's like, I am going to find something and then I am going to presume that this person represents an enemy position of mine, and then I'm going to find fault through a specific lens. And that it's like ponage or just angry comments or fault finding. All these are different things. Maybe these all should have been different things. But fault finding, I would say, is part of blame. It's just, using different languages. This was more about specific sensitivities. If somebody freaks out because you used a word or you didn't frame something through a specific lens, especially if They do it where they're expecting you to know things that there's no way you possibly could have known, but then still acting offended. That's fucking bullshit. At the end of the day, if somebody expects you to know something and then they're mad that you didn't know it, that's dumb. Okay, there's something wrong with that person, and you need to keep that in mind, and you probably need to filter them out of your life, to be completely honest. Or if at the end of the day, if at the end of a discussion they realize that they were actually wrong about the thing that made them angry, but then somehow, some way, you're still the one in trouble, huge red flag. Huge red flag. I have seen that in workplaces. I've seen that in relationships. I have seen that with friendships. And it's always toxic. That is somebody not being able to take accountability. But you know what? I'm digressing, because taking accountability is one of my green flags. And so not being able to take accountability probably shouldn't be in my red flags, but oh well. All right. Everybody knew what the red flags were. I think people ignore it, especially if they get horny, especially if they're me. Okay, sorry. Everything's about balance. Let's see here. I have this script here, and it is not conducive to scanning. All right. I said that. Okay. So let's just jump into the green flags, because apparently I have no idea what I'm doing. Okay. I'm just going to read these because my throat is getting sore and I'm ready to be done with this video, and it's already way longer than I meant for it to be. Okay. Green flag. I didn't number these. First green flag. They tell you what's wrong instead of making you guess. That's, no mind games, no withdrawing, no guilt trips, just words. And when you do have a fight, they're actually able to apologize, especially if something is legitimately their fault, or if they were, legitimately wrong. If somebody can't admit that they were wrong, then that's a problem. So if they can admit that they were wrong, that's a good thing. Now, you need to be on the lookout for fake apologies. Oh, I'm sorry if you were offended by my benign comment. That's not an apology. That's fucking bullshit. Okay, but if somebody is like, you know what, I really did misunderstand, I really did, read the room wrong or something like that, that's a legitimate apology, and that's a good thing. Also, and maybe I should have put this in the red flags, there are some people that if they encounter a legitimate apology, they will actually twist that into a negative thing and hold it against you. So if you legitimately apologize in earnest and that causes somebody to have a lower opinion of you, that's a person who is incapable of thinking objectively about a situation. So yeah. Anybody who's like keeping score, or there's like a relationship ledger, or it's like, oh, you thought that thing was done with from 6 months ago? No, we're going to fight about that again. That's not a good thing. So, all right. Now, you can say no to this person without it turning into a big deal, like no sulking or negotiating. If somebody says, and look, I'm not saying you can't have a discussion about something. And look, it's all about balance, all right? You have to identify what is toxic versus just what is normal. If somebody has very, very slight reluctance, it's okay to have a discussion about that, especially if you've been in a relationship for a long time. And I'm not talking about sexual consent. This isn't maybe a little bit of, that's not what I'm talking about. But if somebody is a little bit skeptical about trying sushi or something, then it's like, okay, come on, try it, balance. Everything's about balance. And seriously, if you're taking anything that I said just as like gospel, that's ridiculous. Okay, I'm talking off the cuff. I'm making a dumb green flags list. If it's beneficial, fine. If it's not beneficial, fine. I don't think that any human being on the face of the earth is going to be like, well, in minute 35 of Luke Taylor's video, he said this. So that just defines my entire life now. You know what? That's one of my red flags. That's fundamentalism. And you just invented a new religion, and bravo. Don't do that. Okay. Any guideline should be just that, a guideline that you take into consideration, and if it's not helping you, then you reject it. That's the way that I look at it. Okay, follow through. Relationship isn't a wheelbarrow. Why did I put that in there? That's the most bullshit line. Okay. They can give and receive affection. Yes. People who are guarded against affection are probably not good to be in a relationship with. And I don't really think that that needs to be explained. People can be silly. Some people get pissy if you're silly, and fuck those people. Okay, healthy relationships. Healthy relationships are important, and relationships should be between two peers, not between one person who thinks that they're in like this weird hierarchical thing where somebody is below them or above them. And I'm gonna be honest, I was guilty of that. Like I would have friends, and then I would like, oh, this is my mentor, and it's, no, he's not. It's my fucking friend. What the fuck are you talking about? And most of that was just me running my mouth. I'm not saying that I necessarily didn't believe it, but I wasn't putting any weight behind my words. So maybe I'm being a little bit overzealous with the self condemnation, and I think being self deprecating is perfectly fine. But I have a long history of saying really weird, awkward, stupid shit, which is probably a good thing. But there are people who take these hierarchical relationships very seriously. And they believe that, certain people are unambiguously below them and certain people are unambiguously above them. And it's just really fucking weird. And then if those conventions are ever challenged, if somebody who, thinks that children are below them is ever challenged by a child, they'll freak the fuck out. Or if they think somebody isn't conforming to a specific role, and then they just instantly get angry at them. Yeah, you know what? Maybe that should have gone in the red flag section. But you know what? I'm glad that we're having this discussion. Okay, they know their own patterns and are willing to work on themselves. Yeah, nobody's perfect, and if somebody thinks they're perfect, that is a serious problem. I dated a girl for years who was incapable of admitting to herself or others that she had been wrong about something. And if she acknowledged, like deep in her mind, non-verbally realized that she had been wrong about something, she would invent these bizarre, complex systems in order to like hide it. So she was like causing drama to fix imaginary issues that only existed in her mind. Don't date somebody like that. I would be such a happier person if I could stop dating people like that. Jesus fucking Christ, Luke. Okay, core values line up. You know what? This is important. Different people value different things. And if you are a religious fundamentalist, you're probably not going to be happy dating somebody who absolutely doesn't believe that shit. But you have to be careful and make sure that you are not being dishonest with yourself. Because I think that there are a lot of people, and I use the example of religious fundamentalism, so I'm going to use it again. There are people who do that because they think that they're supposed to, not because they actually believe it. And I think that that's way more common than religious fundamentalists let on. They love the Jesus because they're supposed to love the Jesus. They're supposed to love the Jesus because it's the expectation that you're supposed to love the Jesus, and it's just a circular relationship. I don't think that that's healthy. And if I were in a relationship with somebody who felt that way, that would probably go pretty poorly, because eventually they're going to reveal that they don't actually believe what they claim to believe. Okay? So, I mean, to me, from my perspective, I would consider that a character fault. But if you have that character fault and you can't get over that character fault, then you'd better find somebody else who's at least sympathetic to that character fault. And look, I get it. You can't call it a character fault because that's insulting the Jesus or whatever. Yeah, if you're a fundamentalist Christian, I don't think that you're going to be listening to me anyway, because you're going to listen to the Jesus for relationship advice. But just know that it really does sound ridiculous to those of us on the outside. That's all I'm going to say. That's it. That's all that I'm saying. Okay, where was I? They like you being close without needing to own you. Oh God, yes. My marriage, I was in a relationship with somebody, and I didn't perceive it as a control thing. Okay, I didn't perceive it as an insecurity thing. She wanted to be together always, all the time. She never wanted to be alone, ever. And it was a serious problem, and it was rooted from deep, deep fear inside of herself. She was a broken individual who needed to fix herself rather than being in a relationship. Instead, she just found a victim, i.e. me, and, brought them into a relationship and attempted to treat themselves that way. Now, look, I'm not saying that her needs should have been overlooked, but I'm saying that it would have been much better off for me if I hadn't been the one that she had preyed on. So, yeah. You need space in a relationship. You need time apart from each other. And if somebody says that you don't need time apart from each other, or thinks that you shouldn't need time apart from each other, or doesn't say it, but just expects you to be there and emotionally available 24/7, huge, huge red flag. And I know that I'm supposed to be on the green flags, but, I just felt like saying that. So, now, this is going to blow your mind. If somebody is all green flags and 0 red flags, that can itself be a red flag. You know why? Because some people are full of shit, all right? Some people are absolutely full of shit. They put on false faces or they're trying to trick you. So yeah, if you have found the absolute perfect person and, they're an entrepreneur and they're a health nut and they never touch sugar and they work out 2 hours a day and they're the perfect father and maybe they're not telling you who they actually are. They're telling you who they think you want them to be. And that's a serious problem. And you know what? I ignored it. When I was initially dating the person who I would later marry, she liked all of my music. And I called it a good thing. And I was cognizant of it. I'm like, whoa, I didn't know that there was anybody in the world who liked all my music. That's just crazy. And there's a problem with that. You see, here's the thing. Nobody likes all of my music. Nobody likes all of my music. In fact, the me from 3 months ago doesn't like the music that I'm listening to today because I listen to really fucking weird shit sometimes. Okay? And that's fine. That's fine. And in a normal, healthy relationship, somebody would say, wow, that Primus that you listen to? Yeah, that's pretty fucking weird. I don't like that. How about if you listen to that when I'm not around? That never happened. You know why? Because of mirroring. She didn't want me to leave, so she thought she had to pretend to like everything that I liked. That was a gigantic red flag, and it did not click. It absolutely did not click. She went out of her way. It wasn't just that she liked what I liked, but she also hid what she liked because she thought that I wouldn't like it. Huge red flag. And you know what? There actually was information available to point that out. It just didn't click. I just didn't register. If somebody is hiding their own preferences or changing who they are for you, whether they're trying to do it in earnest or whether it's 100% an act, either way, it's bad. Bad, bad, bad. That's called mirroring. And this is not just for romantic relationships. Okay, you have to be on the lookout for mirroring and love bombing, and people telling you what you want to hear, because some people are liars and some people are con men. Some people want to hurt you. Some people are just sadistic fucks. And some people want to use you to their own means. They don't actually care about you one way or the other, but they have a specific objective that they're trying to reach. And you are simply a tool in that chain. So, I don't really have like an outro or anything. Just be on the lookout. And if you do get in a relationship, you need to periodically observe yourself and check, hey, am I happy? And are the things that I'm being expected and seen, do they make sense independent of the context that I have been presented with? Because within the context of the things that I had been presented with, it's like all of these strange behaviors that were making me miserable. Well, why did I put emphasis on me like that? That was weird. That sounded like whiny shit. Am I a whiny person? Oh, dear Lord. Well, anyways, things that were making me miserable made sense within the context of the lies that had been constructed by my partner. But if I had taken a step back and I said, this behavior that I'm seeing, have I ever heard of it on the face of the fucking earth? outside of this specific relationship? And the answer is no. Well, you know what? Maybe there's a reason for that. And maybe the reason isn't that of the 8 billion people on the face of the earth, you happen to have received the absolute, objectively most unique person in the history of mankind. No, maybe they're full of shit. You should always assume that somebody might be full of shit. And you should assume that you might be blinded by your romantic and sexual interest in another person. You know, just because you like somebody doesn't mean that they're a good person. Just because you're romantically interested in somebody doesn't mean that they're a good match. And just because you're in love with somebody doesn't mean that they're not lying to you, or that they have your best interests at heart, or that they don't want to hurt you. Okay? A lot of people suck, and there are good people out there who are just not a good fit for you. And you have to be honest with yourself about that. And if you ever find yourself saying, oh, I couldn't possibly live without this person, I cannot imagine my life without this individual in my life, then you have to realize that maybe the toxic one is you. Maybe the unreasonable one is you. Because nobody owes you a relationship, nobody owes you their time. And I think that a lot of toxicity that we see in the world, based on the presupposition of entitlement, that people think that they are entitled to other people's time. People think that they are entitled to, sex with other people or relationships with other people. And that's just, I don't know, it's just another form of slavery, really. I think that relationships suck, and I'm glad that I'm single. And if you seriously just listen to me for 51 minutes to figure out who to date, maybe the right answer is to not date anybody, because it's really difficult to live with somebody else and to make things work out. And you need to be on high alert. You need to be on high alert, and you need to not be blinded by your short sword. And you know what? This is not specifically for men. The same concepts apply to women as well. I know 2 different people who were somewhat close to me that were catfished. And I don't mean catfished like somebody from another country got them to send money to bail them out of jail or something like that. I'm talking about they met somebody, it was a real person, but the person lied about who they were, and they fell for it because the lies corresponded with something that they wanted. And so they didn't listen. They didn't listen to, when they realized it was a lie, they couldn't admit that they'd been tricked. You have to identify that there are things that you want, and not everybody is necessarily being honest with you. Not everybody's being forthright. And you just have to drop your expectations, really. Drop your expectations and accept that, maybe being single is the best situation. Maybe cutting off contact with somebody is the best situation. And that is not just for romantic partners. That's for everything. If you're being emotionally abused by somebody, it doesn't matter if they're a family member, you need to take steps to protect yourself. Because you have value as a human being. Even if you're a toxic person, you have value as a human being. Nobody deserves to be abused. Nobody deserves to be hurt. You got to stand up for yourself. But you don't stand up for yourself by yourself becoming toxic. Very often the best thing to do is to just step away. Now you can try to set up boundaries, but if you're with somebody who's truly a high conflict person, if somebody who truly can't think clearly, if somebody who is so mentally ill that they can't really even process other humans, you might not even really exist to them. And just because they said that you exist to them, just because they said that they love you, doesn't mean that you're compatible. It doesn't. And maybe the correct thing to do is just to not try to be in a relationship. I wish that I had not married my ex. There's no gray area. We dated, and we should not have gotten married. We both agree that we were not a good fit for each other, and yet we just charged straight forward into it. My throat's getting dry. I'm drawing this video to a close. I need to end this. Yeah, stick up for yourself, but not in a way that makes you a dick. Yeah, that's pretty simple, right?